access to it. So that if people have registered but they can't make it, then they can access the recording, hopefully. Because I was hoping I could have the recording from last time to offer to people who weren't there, but I'm just waiting to hear back so that we can make that happen. So my name is Haley, and I'm the program director for Natural Curiosity. I am a guest and settler on Turtle Island, and I am, like many people, on, I don't know, I hate the word learning journey, but learning and unlearning about the true history of this country and what my role is as a treaty person. My role is in education, especially when talking about environmental education and all education, really, and how I can support Indigenous people with talking about this true history, and unburden them to always have to be leading the conversations around residential schools and our role as educators in reconciliation, and our role of educators of acknowledging that when we spend time on the land with students, that we should be acknowledging Indigenous ways of knowing and bringing that into our teaching as we do so. And so, yeah, this is about a conversation. If you're able to either contribute to the chat or once we open it up to a knowledge building, unmute yourself. What we're gonna do tonight is continue to work through some of the self-guided learning series videos and then talk about them in community. And so just again, this is the land acknowledgement that the Natural Curiosity, and we're based out of the Dr. Eric Jackman Institute of Child Study Laboratory School, we often use. And I just want to stress that this is a living document that's meant to change over time and is meant to reflect new knowledge as we learn it. I just had a really good conversation with one of the Indigenous education leads from York Region District School Board about their new land acknowledgement and how it focuses less on the traditional territories that the school board is on and focuses more on the actual treaties to really focus on, I know I just said focus on like 5 times, but our roles and responsibilities as treaty people. So it's just interesting in hearing about the process and the shift to that. So yeah. I don't think I shared last time, but Natural Curiosity did a webinar called Finding Curriculum in the Land, Lessons from Northern Ontario, where 2 early years educators talked about their land-based pedagogy in kindergarten and how their connection to the outdoors and to the land actually helped them create a land acknowledgement throughout the year with their students. So if anyone is in the early years and is interested in the process that these educators went through to develop that, I just popped the link into the chat. So I thought in talking about Natural Curiosity often talks about the quote from Truth and Reconciliation, which says that reconciliation between Indigenous and non-Indigenous people cannot happen unless we are also reconciled with the earth. So I really wanted to bring forward this video from Isaac Murdoch and the Onaman Connect Collective, which talks about this idea, or he shares that his reconciliation begins with the land. And I will offer this as an alternate or an addition to the land acknowledgement that I already shared.
Reconciliation, I think that it really needs to start with the earth. It's the foundation of everything. I want to reconcile with the old growth forests that have been cut down. Because some of those trees were thousands of years old. Like, they had so much, like, they were elders. Like, they were 1,000-year-old elders that got cut down. They had a lot of knowledge. You know, they held the code on how to live with Earth. And I want to reconcile with that. I want to reconcile with bird populations that have been wiped out because of climate change. You know, the humans did that. I need to reconcile with that. I want to reconcile with fish populations that have been wiped out because of pollution and microplastics. You know, I think that's important because the fish nation, they have all that knowledge about the water. And it was so important to us as humans to maintain that balance as we walked on this earth. You know, especially with those fish nations, because that's an important part of who we are. And I want to reconcile with that. The tar sands, they're going to grow. They're already the largest environmental disaster on the planet. You can see it from the moon. Like, we don't need the tar sands to grow. We need them to heal. And I want to reconcile with that. And last but not least, I want to reconcile with the waters. The lakes and the rivers, the oceans, the ecosystems that were just bursting with life, that were destroyed for development. I want to reconcile with that. I think that those things need to be the basis and the foundation of everything that we do and how we move forward, not only as a country, but, you know, as human beings. And so I think that seriously needs to be the foundation of reconciliation. I think if you take that out of the equation, then you're just creating a disaster. As First Nations people, we are the voice of this land. And our languages are almost being wiped out. I want to reconcile with that. But all of these things that I talk about, you can reconcile in your heart. But it's also reconciling by taking action, by doing something, by getting out there on the land, by getting out into the clear cuts and getting out to the lakes and making offerings and praying for future generations. To me, that's reconciliation. Praying for the languages, you know, praying for the old people so that they can stick around just a little bit longer with us, so that they can teach us a little bit more about that ancient code to live on earth. I want to focus on that. You know, getting our young people out on the land so that they can see the richness of what's left. To me, that's reconciliation. To me, it's the foundation of any healthy society. The benchmark for success needs to have healthy ecosystems in there, biospheres, clean air. Like, that needs to be our benchmark for success. Not economic development and growth as we see it now. When we can drink water out of that stream or out of that lake, to me, that's success. So when I think about reconciliation, I'm not even thinking about the reconciliation between governments and myself and my people. How can we reconcile with the earth and the waters and the animals? I think that really needs to be our next move forward. We're in a critical time. We're in sacred times. And the next generation is really depending on us to do that. And I truly hope that we're able to do that and that we can do it together. And I believe we can. So let's reach out. Let's support each other. And let's just really just love everything to pieces if we can. Because that's what the world needs. It needs us to love everything again.
So just wanted to start with those incredible words around what at least Isaac Murdoch believes reconciliation should be. And I think that yeah, is a great place to start, especially when we're going to take a look at the second branch video of Natural Curiosity, because I don't think we got to it last time, but somebody clarify, because I wanted to double check on the video recording, but I hadn't gotten it back yet. And I've done a lot of workshops in the last month, which is incredible for Natural Curiosity, but sometimes I forget what I do where, to be completely honest. Jumping forward, if you feel like it, I know some people are still eating dinner and are just joining us, but you can introduce who you are and where you are and what you do. But if that makes sense for you, I know this is a time where people are finishing dinner or putting kids to bed or doing whatever you need to be doing. So only if that makes sense for you. And again, just grateful to the people who made this free workshop possible. Natural Curiosity is a completely donor-funded program. It is based out of the University of Toronto, but although the way that we run our program is through donations and through book sales and sales of our professional development. So it's great to be able to offer things for free. So grateful to OACM and ALP and Dell Technologies. And yeah, just a reminder, if you're not able to turn your video off, it's great to interact through reactions or through the chat, just to let me know there's people out there. Yeah, so this is the pedagogy of Natural Curiosity. And what you're seeing on the left is the first edition of the resource. And then we moved to the second edition, which has incorporated an Indigenous lens on each of the 4 branches, written by Doug Anderson, who is Métis or Bungee. And what we've developed recently that I thought we could share are these self-guided learning series. And so we've said self-guided because people can watch them themselves, but what we're really encouraging groups of educators to do is to watch the video and then come back in community to talk about the big ideas of the video. And so just again, before we jump in, this is the pedagogy. And I know that people are maybe joining from all over Ontario. And I do think people are allowed to join even across Turtle Island if there are spaces available, and there were. But Doug Anderson, who is the Indigenous author, really wanted to make sure that people understood that he wasn't trying to present a pan-Indigenous perspective in this resource. But what he does say is that there are commonly agreed upon qualities of most, if not all, Indigenous perspectives. And those include 4 things that he's decided to share here, which are a strong sense of spirituality, which Doug has connected to the branch on inquiry and engagement and has called it lighting the fire. And then a deeply rooted sense of place, which has been connected to experiential learning, and Doug has titled Sending Out Roots. And we're going to be looking at the video on that, unless someone reminds me that we already watched that video last time. A recognition that everything is related, which is being connected to integrated learning, and the flow of knowledge is what it's being called. And then moving towards sustainability. An emphasis on reciprocity, which is being connected to the branch on moving towards sustainability and has been called breathing with the world. And so last time I believe we watched the introduction video as well as branch 1. And we spent some time, thinking about this question: what does environmental inquiry look like when you come into a deeper relationship with Indigenous perspectives on the land? So we definitely worked through that one. Thanks, Nicole. And Nicole, did we watch branch 2 as well? I don't think we did, but tell me if I'm wrong. Or maybe I can start playing it, because I've also got, no, we didn't. Okay, that's what I thought. I was pretty sure about that, but I've got I was saying earlier, a 2.5-year-old who sucks my brain energy as well. So this is, I believe, about 11-ish minutes. So that will take us to about just after 7:30. And then we're going to come together in a knowledge building circle to discuss a question, which I will put in the chat so that you can sort of begin to think about as we watch this video. So Doug shares in the second branch. He says, we're taking steps towards Indigenous understanding when we take students outside and provide opportunities for them to use all of their senses to make fundamental connections with as many aspects of the world around them. An Indigenous approach challenges us to ask, how do we deepen our relationship with the place we are in? How do we send out roots? And that can mean many different things for many different people. So let's take a look at this video with that question in mind, and then afterwards we'll come together for a knowledge building circle. The second branch is experiential learning. And often in education, when we talk about experiential learning, the sort of first thing that comes to mind is hands-on. And those experiences are really important, but we have to connect it back to inquiry and engagement, and this idea of their students' minds also being on and reflecting back on the experiences that they have when we spend time outside in the natural world. And then also connecting back to the Indigenous lens, we also have to have our hearts on and have our hearts deeply connected to the learning that's happening. And so experiential learning involves those hands-on experiences outside in the natural world that are authentic and make learning meaningful and important for students. And then this connects to the Indigenous lens of sending out roots. So when we spend significant time in the natural world outside of our school, we become deeply connected to it. That makes learning that much more enriching and engaging when we're deeply connected to place. But we also have this understanding of the importance for protecting that place and feeling like you are a part of that place. So not separate from nature. And so sending out our roots is an integral part of experiential learning.
We, as a school, really try to think of authentic ways, reasons to bring children outside, but even sometimes we don't even worry about that. We just bring them outside as much as possible, because out of that can come an incredible inquiry connection that we wouldn't have been possible if we were just in a classroom, looking at a notebook, a textbook, or something online.
You know, one of the things that when it comes to land-based learning, it is often something that you will see being implemented in the primary grades, and teachers really feel a sense of permission to do that work. And unfortunately, I don't see as much of an uptake, particularly in the intermediate grades, and those were the grades that I had the most experience teaching. Now, I had a lot of challenges with doing land-based learning, as I think a number of teachers in urban environments do, but I think I want to assert here how important land-based learning is, because especially with grade 7 and 8 students, they are going through profound changes physiologically, emotionally, psychologically, physically. And again, the research shows like there's more chemical reactions happening in their brains at that time, as they say, almost equates to the Big Bang. Like that's how profound a change, adolescents are going through. And that teaching at the adolescent level is sometimes seen as very difficult by other teachers. Like when I would tell teachers I'm a grade 7 and 8 teacher, and some would say, oh my gosh, I wouldn't teach that grade because it's seen as so challenging. And I think one of the reasons it has been challenging is because we haven't approached it as rites of passage work, because they are going through a profound rite of passage. In terms of student identity, this is the first time in their lives that they're starting to recognize who they are outside of their immediate family unit. And they're starting to think about who they are beyond that and define themselves beyond that. And what better way to help students develop a sense of their own identity than in relationship to the natural world? Because that's really the place of first belonging. Like when we think about belonging, before we belong anywhere, we actually really belong to this earth. We belong to all of the chemical reactions that have happened that have made us who we are in that moment. So really allowing students at that age level to have rites of passage work on the land, to start to see themselves in that larger cosmic, a more cosmic as well as grounded place, helps nurture their resilience and their mental health and well-being. And that's why I think it's so important to bring this at those grade levels and really push against some of the constraints to do that work.
Kids don't need a lot of guidance when you're outside. When I first decided, okay, we're going to the park, we're going to do it twice a week, we're going to be out there an hour and a half every time, rain, snow, sunshine. And then I started plotting all the things we were going to do outside. And I'm going to read a story, and then we're going to have an activity. And of course, I'm going to give them time to play. And the more I did it, the more I realized, oh, yeah, it's great reading stories outside. It's wonderful doing a planned activity outside. But the most important things were really just giving the kids time to know this place that we were returning to. And they bring so much back. When they feel deeply connected to a place, and an outdoor place, they start listening differently, they start looking differently, they start embedding the outside world into their conversation and their ideas and their play inside. And it becomes this very fluid connection. And again, because a child's world is about the whole world, not about pieces, not about strands or strips of things, I think being intentional now about getting kids outside just brings a very important layer to the way we want them to know themselves in the world. When I think about how I have been influenced by thinking deeply about Indigenous practices and how they relate to my teaching, a couple of things really stand out for me. One is a little bit of a shift, but it also feels like, going back to who we all were as children. And that's centering ourselves in the world rather than being observers of the world. And when I, as a, pretty late years human being and teacher, really was confronted with that shift in perspective, that we are of this place, we are of this land, we're not above it or outside of it, looking down on it or looking over at it. We are in it. It felt so true, and yet something that I had managed to ignore for a while. And that recentering of our place in the world, I hope that I have shared that with the children that I then teach. And I feel like it comes through in the way that we talk about the world, that we talk about our park, not the park. We talk about, our earth, not the earth. And I think that those are important pieces of feeling both connected and feeling responsible. Because when you are part of a place, then it counts what you do. You realize that every choice you're making affects things. So that's one piece that has had, I think, kind of a deep effect on me in terms of my perspectives that's influenced my teaching?
So being a third generation Torontonian, access to land, especially in this urban space, has been an important part of connecting with identity. For my family, the concept of being like connected to a First Nation, it's part of our identity, like being part of Chaging. But like I grew up taking the subways here, using the park system. Even the first like instances of connecting with spirituality was like Taylor Creek Park. I took myself out for a fast. I sat out there for a couple hours to connect with the land and with nature. And so the predominant ideologies in the community in the time when I was growing up was that the city wasn't a place that was spiritually pure or clean or safe to be conducting ceremony in. Elders were being brought in, and that gave me the opportunity to connect with spirituality. And it was, they didn't have a name for it then, but experiential learning. Like I got to go out and do sweats every full moon and to connect. And so now, you know, while I'm in this role as administrator, I'm a ceremonial conductor for Anishinaabe culture. And so it's proof that you can actually be doing this work. And in particular, like with educators, the experience I had as a kid in the TDSB was very extractive. So teachers were like wanting us to bring in culture and perform culture and then keep it in a box. And I think there's greater opportunities now through like natural curiosities and other avenues where Indigenous education is being valued. And so it gives opportunity to share Indigenous knowledge and teachings by getting people into that space. So it's not static.
You want to be helping kids develop resilience, but you're not going to help them develop resilience by just slamming them with all the terrible things that are happening in the world. So it's a really fine line, and I think different children are differently sensitive to these things. I think partly because of who they are, partly because of maybe the way the family talks about these things. So I think as a teacher, it's delicate because you're not wanting to terrify children that the world is like in dire straits and that the onus is on them as a 6-year-old to suddenly, you know, fix things.
When it comes to addressing ecological issues, and particularly the climate crisis, you know, the climate emergency, which I think there's just continues to be mounting evidence, that is going to transform education by necessity. And then thinking about natural curiosity, which is a land-based pedagogical approach, as well as one that is really, it doesn't integrate Indigenous knowledge systems, it actually centers them. It centers them within their own integrity. And both the land-based and bringing Indigenous pedagogies, worldviews, knowledge systems, centering those, both of those are really, really important to addressing the kind of dramatic ecological change. And here I want to kind of bring forward, you know, one of my teachers, Gahandakwa Stan Longboat, and one of the things she says is you have to fall in love with creation in order to rise up to protect it. And that's why land-based learning is so important, is we need to really fall in love with the land. We need to really understand the truth of our relationship, how dependent we are to all that the land provides, to these natural systems, to how interconnected we are. If we don't have that understanding, I think not having that understanding or being separated is what's brought, you know, our society to the point that it is, because we haven't really had an aligned relationship to the land. We haven't had a loving relationship to the land. We've had a very extractive and exploitative relationship. And education has to really counter that, really has to embed, you know, that love and embeddedness in land as, you know, moving forward.
All right. Thanks, Steph, for starting us off in the chat. So we're going to begin a knowledge building circle. If people weren't here in the past, this is just a quote I wanted to bring forward, that the goal of knowledge building is not simply to create lifelong learners. Like, we talk a lot about creating lifelong learners, but knowledge building really wants to focus on creating lifelong contributors. So people who yes, continue to learn, but also feel confident, feel comfortable in contributing their ideas, their perspectives, their questions, what they don't know, what they think they know, to the conversation, to what's happening in society. And so on page 18 in Natural Curiosity, it talks about, sorry, I have to sneeze. Excuse me, talks about some of the principles of knowledge building. And so students and ourselves is a great thing to do with colleagues as well. We work on authentic problems and real ideas. There's this emphasis that all ideas are improvable and we can talk about them in community. A diversity of ideas is valued. Students exercise their epistemic agencies. They have agency over their learning, and all members assume collective responsibility for community knowledge. And so this is our knowledge building question. So what I'm going to do is the question is in the chat. I'll stop sharing my screen. So it makes it easier for me to take a look at the chat, as well as if anyone feels comfortable turning on their video and just speaking out loud, if that's easier. We have all different types of learners. I know, just like our students, some people like to talk. Me, I don't like to write. Some people like to write. So Steph shared that we send out roots by, well, let me read the question first. So how do we deepen our relationship with the place we are in? How do we send out roots? And again, that question, we can bring in more questions if that one's not, feeling right for you in the moment. But we send out roots by planting the seeds first. Without nurturing the seed, there is no growth and process. The roots of learning will continue to grow only by taking care, respecting, loving the natural world, and respecting the life and work on this land with Indigenous people, or of Indigenous people that are protectors of the land and its relatives. By listening to the voices of Indigenous people, by giving back to this land, our respect and understanding. Love the metaphor of the seed so this is, where are we now? Oh, it just popped up on me. Oh, can we see the question on the slide again? Oh, sorry, the chat just jumped for me. Yes, I can share my screen again. Oh yes, Jennifer, I think you came in after I shared the question. So let me get that for you. I'll pull the whole thing in. And if anyone wants to just pop on and share what they're thinking, they can.
Oops. Hi, it's Melanie.
Hi.
I like, once, as I was watching the video, I also was thinking about Michael Fullan and his work with deep learning. And this sense of planting that seeds, or really, you can't have that deep learning unless that learning takes root, or is anchored, right? Because otherwise, you're skimming the surface. If you don't have that learning taking root, you're able to, for lack of a better word, uproot it very, very quickly. And there's no, it's not sustainable. It's not, it doesn't, I just think it doesn't have that meaning or that implication. And certainly that connection with the land itself, I think is terrible, is crucial, right?
And I believe it's Anil.
Hi, everyone.
Hi.
For me, what stood out for me, I mean, everything that Mel said and Steph talked about in terms of connection to the land, and almost like you can learn about all you can by reading and looking at pictures, but that tactile connection is so important to internalizing it. And but then I also wonder in terms of how important that is in urban areas to have those opportunities, and appreciate some of the early, like the kindergarten spaces, or even in older grades, because in the video they talked about, we think of experiential learning very linked to sort of kindergarten or primary years, but how important that is as well in the middle school years as well, providing those opportunities to get back and experience those things. One of the things, and I whenever I think about, like, possessive things like the earth, the land, the water, I don't know, maybe I don't know why I do that, but I do try not to use our, and I don't know where that came from, but it was an interesting point that was made in the video. It was almost the opposite of what I thought, instead of saying the land, talk about our land. And I don't know if it's because this land is a new land for me. I don't know why I don't connect it with those possessive words. And I wondered if what others thought about that too, because even the same thing is true when I talk about students. I try to not say our students or our resources, but is it different because it's the earth? I don't know. That struck me when I was listening as well.
I know. Go ahead.
I was going to say that's very interesting, because if we think about being guardians of the land, all of us have that responsibility to be guardians of the land. But then are we also not necessarily the guardians of the learners that we serve, but certainly in some aspects, we do take responsibility there too. So what's the line? Sorry, didn't mean to interrupt.
Nicole, go ahead.
So I think that, Iniel, it is our land, because going way back to the beginning and talking about the land acknowledgements, and we're all treaty people. And if you know the Tura Wampum, it's like 3 white strands interspersed by 2 purple strands, and the 2 purple strands are water, and they're supposed to represent like the Dutch ship that came over for settlers, and then the indigenous canoe. So the thing is, like, what it was reciprocity, in that the land was shared and it was all of ours. So in our treaty agreement, it does say that we use the term our land. So I don't know if that helps you to feel better about starting to use it, then I hope it helps.
Thanks, Nicole. I really like that connection that you brought back to the wampum, and that the 2 parallel lines. I also recently listened to a podcast by Kalinda Klein, and she talks about this the book. Anyhow, in one of the podcasts, they talk about the fact that with that, and like, it's almost like you live your lives respecting the spaces that were given to you, and she connected it back to that particular the wampum, and talking about not interfering with each other's sort of way of life as well. So I like that you brought it back in terms of we're all treaty people, and thank you for that. I will reflect on it more.
Yeah, thank you. And actually, Maria, who spoke about teaching grade 7 and 8, in one of I'm trying to remember if it's in the reciprocity or in the integration video, she does sort of talk about the two-row wampum and bring that forward. But I kind of had that similar reaction when I first listened to Carol speak. But then I sort of put it, like, I think if you hear it on its own, I feel that a little bit about like the possessive piece. I hear that. But then she also was talking about this idea of we are of this land. And so she sort of says that first and then goes into this idea of like our park. So I think that listening to it the second time as a whole, I was like, okay, yes. But I had sort of a similar reaction to the first time I heard Carol's video. But yeah, it's an important part of this conversation. And thanks, Nicole, for bringing forward the two-row wampum and our responsibilities to this land as settlers and treaty people. Okay. And Claudia shared, I believe we need to love the land, but more to love, learn about the land, to nurture not just the land as soil, but as story that is deeply connected, go the past as to the present, or I'm guessing to the past as to the present. Without knowledge, understanding, and respect, it's difficult to start the relationship. Nothing can root without a relationship. Yeah. Relationship with people and to the land for sure. Nicole, yeah, I will share my screen again. Let me do that. There we go. Can you see it now?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Yeah, and you know, when talking about that idea, I've heard the possessive our, not in relationship to land, but in relationship to like our Indigenous people in Canada, and that being offensive to many Indigenous people. So I connect to that idea as well in the conversation. Okay. All right, so thanks everybody for contributing to the conversation around that. I'm not sure if I shared this link last time, and again, not exactly sure where everybody's coming from in terms of the age group, but I think I shared Zoe's video of grade 1 students doing a knowledge building circle. But this is again older grades talking about learning through a knowledge building approach and what that can maybe look like in the junior and upper grades. So just wanted to share that link. Yeah, so experiential learning, some of the research about why this is important, especially when talking about sort of environmental education, because I think this sort of shows that getting outside is maybe more important than, you know, actual learning of big ideas and content. So one study found that daily positive childhood experiences in natural habitats were more frequently reported influences leading to activist behavior in adulthood. And then another study, sorry, just moving things around so I can see the slide. Positive memories of outdoor experiences more strongly predicted subsequent stewardship actions than did the acquisition of content knowledge about environmental issues. So that one's huge, right? Getting outside and having positive memories outdoors is maybe more beneficial, or should be always happen alongside of learning about content, learning about endangered species, or learning about climate change, right? Going back to what Maria said, the quote from Diane Longboat, that we have to fall in love with creation. I think she said, yeah, fall in love with creation before we're expected to want to protect it. And so, yeah, and then finally, time spent outdoors with a caring adult in childhood uniquely predicts later inclinations towards environmental activism. So just more evidence about why it's important to actually spend significant time outside with our students. And again, this was this quote that we worked on, that we spend time with together in our knowledge building circle. One that I really connect to in the second branch, the Indigenous lens. And then I just wanted to bring forward this article when talking about land-based learning from UNESCO. I think it's a really, came out this summer. And I think it's a really great article when talking about Indigenous land-based learning to further this conversation. Sorry, just see that Steph added. I think about all, and where scroll up one more time. Oh yeah, there we go. And Neil says, I think about all the schools I've been at, the rich outdoor spaces that surrounded us, yet we spend so much time indoors. I know. And it's funny, this reminded me, the predecessor. So I started this job 2005, but the woman that had this job before me went on to go back to teaching in the classroom. And I remember talking to her the year before. She's like, it's so funny. Like, even though I know all of this, I know how good it is, like, I have to like constantly be running that narrative in my mind while getting my grade 2s ready to get outside, because it's so much easier to just stay inside. And she's like, no, like, I got to get out there. And like, what would Haley say? What would my colleagues say? So it's just funny. It's just, our systems are so set up to not get out there. And Steph says, in our kindergarten class, we have a daily routine. And that's, Steph, great. Set a routine, going outside around the school and the neighborhood. Through our walks and conversations about children's discoveries, we connect with the natural world. Children are learning to listen to the natural world around them. They are in a continued dialogue with the land, and that is how connections happen. As educators, we learn together with the children by reading books, using ID guides to learn about the trees, plants, animals that live in our school community. Thank you. Thanks, Nicole, for putting that in, figuring out, yeah, how you became who you are.
And I think it's also interesting that, like, you know, I don't know if warmer places are any different, but like, maybe, I don't know if there's research on this as well. Is there an optimal age range when that needs to happen for that to be sort of imprinted? Because definitely as a child, we were always outside. It was, you know, you walked the paddy fields, you were with the land, you grew your stuff, like everything was based on land. But after coming here, all of that went away. Yet, as Nicole mentions, there is that pull to that, going back to that land-based sort of living and ways of being. And I wonder if it's because that developmental age, I don't know if there is research on that.
Yeah, like at what point does that have to happen? Yeah, I'm not sure. But I think, yeah, the early years are such a great time to start. But then if anything, it's like, okay, if you get it, but then it disappears, as discussed in that video, right? Like, it seems like people are okay with it happening in the early years and maybe up to grade 2, but then it slowly starts to disappear in the upper grades. So yeah, if you get access to that in the early years, but then it peters out, is there still the positive impact that was shown in those studies? I'm not sure. All right, Claudia, the land as ours could be maybe trying to take ownership of something. It's what has brought the mentality of taking away the land and breaking relationships instead of nurturing. I think if students learn about the dish with one spoon, land shared, yeah, so then again, connection to another wampum belt, the dish with one spoon wampum, and taking just what we need. When walking the land, taking what we need, but also planting seeds of hope by cleaning and advocating to have clean spaces in the communities. Yeah, great. Thank you for sharing that as well, in that perspective. All right, so I just wanted to share that there are 2 more videos in the self-guided learning series, and we've got about 5 minutes, but I do encourage you to continue watching them on your own, or encourage colleagues to join you in conversation about these videos and about what this could maybe look like in your learning context. Yeah, I just hope that you have the opportunity to continue these conversations moving forward. And thank you so much for joining me tonight, or to many of you joining me for the last 2 sessions, and for some of you joining me for the last 4 sessions. It's always so incredible to talk to educators who are deeply thinking about all of this. Yeah, so I popped that link into the chat for the self-guided learning series that include the branch on integrate, or the video on integrated learning, as well as the one on moving towards sustainability, which talks about this idea of reciprocity. And I believe that is where Maria talks about the 2-row wampum, which is connected to our conversation for tonight. So again, thank you so much for joining. I am going to pop some links into the chat. Let me just unshare my screen for a second, and then I will scroll. I always over prepare, but it's okay. Here. And share that. So we do have a newsletter that we put out, and it's great. I know everybody is so exhausted and, don't have time to, I sometimes don't even time to read all of it. But it's another place to access resources about these topics. And then the other thing I wanted to share, where did it go? Oh, is, again, I did this survey for another workshop. And again, it's the same survey for every single workshop. So sometimes it's hard to put everybody in the same box, as we all know about assessment, right? But I think it does help maybe promote Dell or the people who fund this to be convinced to do it again. So if you have a moment, if you could fill out the survey, that would be amazing for the past 2 sessions. And I can hang around if anyone has questions, and continue to pop links in the chat if anyone has any more. Here we've got a YouTube page, as well as some Pinterest pages that can help continue this conversation. And thanks so much. And oh yeah, did I click? We do have, sorry, I'm looking what else is on that screen. And our award season should be starting up soon, which is the sponsored sounds like the wrong word, but Edward Bertinsky, who is an environmental photographer, helps, I guess sponsors the right word, our educator awards for educators that are incorporating environmental inquiry and Indigenous perspectives into their practice. So we'll be announcing the application process for that soon. And educators like yourself who are deeply thinking about this and doing this work on the land are great candidates for that award. So, and even people who don't win the award, we still like to feature the stories of many of the applicants on in our newsletters. So to share what's possible and what people are doing. So thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you. Oh, Kathy, I'm just seeing your comment if you're still here. Informal institution. Yeah, walking outside is not always available. Yeah, that's definitely, oh, looks like she's gone.
Hi, just a quick question. I am filling up the survey,
Yeah.
but it doesn't have nothing for my profession. You just have teachers, superintendents, students. I am a DC working at a kindergarten classroom. So if the survey next time is a little bit more inclusive to include all the professions and the education system will be like really nice.
Yeah, I agree with you, Claudia. So I will give that feedback. I wasn't a part of developing that survey. So I will give that feedback to OECM.
And they are asking me for your name in the survey.
Okay, that's fine. Oh yeah, my name isn't on here, is it?
Yes, it's not.
I'm sorry. Yeah, it's because I had to log in through theirs. Okay, let me put in the chat.